Welcome to the New Lead Order podcast. I'm Marjorie Bostwick Phoenix. I'm a leadership evolution architect for corporate and entrepreneurial women in that threshold moment of their life. These are women who are ready to break the rules and lead, live, and love outside of the box. In this space, we explore through conversation with powerhouse women how they are paving the way into this new world order that is upon us. This is the New Lead Order. There's a moment in this episode where Reverend Evelyn Bourne says something that stops me cold. She says, God in me, as me, is me. And then later she says, the Bible says, lean not on your own understanding. I say, lean on your own understanding. That right there is the whole conversation. Reverend Evelyn Bourne is an ordained minister of spiritual consciousness, a credentialed prayer practitioner, and a SoulCollage Facilitator. She is doing the kind of work that this moment is calling for, helping people find freedom not by looking up or out, but by finally looking inward. We talk about what it actually took for her to step into her calling, the doubt, the fears, the audible voice she heard at an ordination ceremony that changed the trajectory of her life. We talked about the difference between believing and knowing, why self trust is the real foundation of spiritual leadership, and why the companion model of leadership, arm in arm, walking together, is the only honest model she can stand behind. This conversation also touches on something I feel deeply. We're living through a leadership crisis, and the antidote isn't a new strategy, it's a new source, one that starts within. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to the New Lead Order podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. I only thought that it was fitting since you've already invited me on your Wisdom Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I'm loving what you're doing there. And I'm loving you also have the 30 days of prayers right now, right?
40. Yeah.
That is commitment.
That's my observance of a secular Lent celebration. So yeah.
That is beautiful. I loved it. I've been listening to a few of them. You have them early in the morning, so I'm not always up at that time,
Yeah.
but the recording is there on Substack for anyone who wants to see them and be a part of it. But we so need it right now. So thank you so much to committing to that for
You're
all of
welcome.
us. So yeah. So listen, we had a conversation on Wisdom Wednesdays, and if you guys want to see that recording, that is on my YouTube. It's titled When the Old World Breaks, the Feminine Remembers. And of course, a recording is on your YouTube as well, Reverend Evelyn. But before we get into the work that you do, okay, tell us a little bit about, who you are beyond the titles and the credentials. Like, how are you holding the role of minister and practitioner and mother all together, like all at once?
Yeah. So, wow. So I have always had a spiritual life, right? So I can remember when I was a very small child, and my dad was fascinated by the space program. And he had this big book that was called To the Moon, and it was big, shiny, glossy. It was published. I don't how I remember it was published by Time Life Publishers. I don't know, but it was a big, glossy thing. And he told me that the Earth is hanging in space, and that it revolves around the sun. And so I just had this image as a little kid, seeing myself as a little person on this planet that's spinning around the sun. And it's just like, it filled me with so much awe, right? And so I feel like from that time forward, I have been chasing sort of that awe, that spirit, that connection, like what kind of a God creator like creates this planet hanging in space and the people. It's like I have always had questions like that. And the adults around me have always been just like, because I didn't discover until I was older that adults don't like kids to ask them questions that they don't have the answers for. Right. And so I was, as an adult, I realized as a little kid, I was asking theological questions. And the adults were like, you know what? Stop asking somebody questions. Go play with your dolls. Go play outside. Leave us alone. So, yeah. So I moved through my life sort of in a very spiritual way, like trying to figure out, like, why did this creator put me here? Why am I here? What's my role? What am I supposed to do there? So, everything in my life has sort of led up to, it took me I'm a late bloomer. But I feel like I'm finally living in my purpose as a first as a prayer practitioner, because I've always had a prayer life. And then the weekend after I was licensed as a prayer practitioner, I started seminary. And so now I'm an ordained minister, and I'm also a mom with 3 daughters. They're all grown. So I'm not really mommying right now as far as raising children. They're already raised. Um, but it is such a blessing to me to know that I am in a space in my life where I'm not striving for the thing. I wanted to be a prayer practitioner, but I had that whole like not enoughness thing. And then I sort of feel like I handled that, and then I received a call to ministry, which I feel like I've sort of had my entire life, but I have doubted it. And finally, it became crystal clear that that was going to be what I was going to do. So yeah, I've
Mm,
always had that yearning, that to fill that God-sized void within me.
hmm. There's so much in that. I got to tell you, I mean, being a late bloomer, I, I can sort of relate to that. And having those questions as a child that your parents or the adults around you either don't want to answer or really are unable to answer because they have their own questions, right?
Hmm.
And this knowing that there's something bigger, right? And then questioning, are you the person to really figure all of this out, to see what else is out there, that not enoughness, right? All of this is a part of, your evolution, right? And
Yeah.
so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, if you could tell us a little bit about that move from the curiosity of the cosmos and God and creation to saying, now I want to be an ordained minister. And what that looks like, because a lot of times when we say ordained minister, the first thing people are going to think is, oh, you pastor a church of some kind, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So share a little bit of that. Was there a catalyst to that, or did you feel like it was just this seamless transition that took you and moved you into that?
Yeah, it was not a seamless transition. So my to become a prayer practitioner, it was a 4-year, because it was part-time classes, right? I didn't go somewhere and study classes all day, and it was evening classes, like 6-week, 6-week, 8-week classes in the evenings after work, you know. So it was a 4-year process. And when you get towards the end, you're just like, I just want this to be done. I feel like I'm filled up to here with spiritual stuff. I'm good. I'm good. But a few weeks towards before we were taking our test, my colleagues and I in the practitioner program were talking about what we're going to do next. And um, I was I produced an ordination ceremony for a couple of colleagues at my spiritual center. And when it was over, they were they had like a receiving line, and I was sort of waiting off to the side for them to get through shaking hands and hugging everybody. I was going to wait for my turn. And while I was standing there at the sort of off from the dais near the stage, I heard an audible voice say, "You will be ordained too." Now, I get messages from spirit and all that. I've never heard an audible. And so I turned my head, and there was no one around me. And I was like, that was not in my bingo card. I was like, I was not, after studying for 4 years, planning. So in an odd series of events, I ended up at Inner Visions Institute for Spiritual Development, which is Reverend Dr. Ann Levan Zant's organization. Yeah, two of my mentors and one of my colleagues in the practitioner program have gone through her program, and they've just raved about it constantly. And yeah, so I just received that call, like, because it didn't seem like I had been picking up on it throughout my life. It was like, let's make it crystal clear, sweetie. And then by another series of absolutely miraculous events, I was able to have the finances to do it. So I, after to become a practitioner, you sit for a panel. There's a 4-person panel, and you have to answer questions and, all of that. The week after that, I started at seminary. And I just was like, who am I? What is happening? So I felt like it felt ordained. Do you know what I mean? Like, it felt finally like I was living into something that had been waiting for me to figure out, to get on board with.
Yes, yes, yes. Usually in an experience like that, because I've had a few of those as well, um, it's like it's an outer world experience, but there's also this like, me, are you talking to me? Sort of thing, right? It's like, and and this is why I wanted to talk to you and ask you about this, because this origin story is so important to understand people's evolution,
Mm-hmm.
and to also know that it's not always as seamless. There's going to be a tension, a tension between hearing, feeling, and really actually moving into that. And that's where this this conversation around self-trust, right,
Yeah.
is really important, because I'm sure that you were questioning, can I actually do this? This
Oh,
seems too big for me, right?
absolutely. That was a huge issue for me in seminary. And I tell you what, Inner Visions is a different kind of a program. Um, because when I tell people about some of the things, some of my experiences in seminary, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we didn't do that in seminary." You know. So she really, and I had a beautiful foundation in my practitioner studies. Um, because the point, one of the points of the training is to clear the vessel, right? If you are going to stand in the gap for people, your issues can't be in the way, right? And that's not to say, oh, we're all healed and perfect and but we sort of go sort of through a catalog of like, what are your issues? How are you addressing? It's like forgiveness work, shadow work, like really getting in there. And one of my issues, again, um, I'm in my late 50s now. I was in my early 50s. And I just had this thing like, I'm too old. I was like, what the hell? What am I doing? What, why, why would I be called to be a minister at this age, like this big age? Because by the time I'm done, I'm going to be this age. And my professors were just like, are you questioning your calling? Is this the thing you want to focus your angst and doubt and think? She's like, you clearly have a call on your life and you're answering it. So why are you now going back? Like Lot's wife looking back. Do you know what I mean? Like, what
Yeah.
are you doing? This is not what you want to be focusing your energy on. And so, yeah, it wasn't smooth sailing. Oh, I went through. No, it was hard work. It was a lot of tears, um, just a lot of deep digging into the self to so that I can make myself available to people, for prayer or for spiritual guidance and leadership and all that. And self-trust for me came from uh so I was raised a Christian, and it's as a Christian, self-trust is almost beaten out of you. You're encouraged to trust something outside of yourself and to place all of your agency in something outside of yourself. And so when I was exposed to New Thought in the early 2000s, and I heard the guiding principle, which is God is within, I had the sky daddy concept of God. And my sky daddy was often not pleased with me. And I felt like it had a bony finger pointed at me, pointing out my flaws, telling me that I was a wretched sinner. And I moved through life kind of like, oh, this is going to piss Sky Daddy off. Um, but when I learned that God in me, as me, is me, that to me was the biggest epiphany of my life because it shifted everything.
Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying this episode. As we're talking about building self trust, it is really something that doesn't just happen. It's something that you build upon over time. And that's exactly why I created the Emergence Map. Now, the Emergence Map is a tool for women who know something is shifting in them and who can feel that pull towards something bigger, but they aren't quite sure where they are in that journey or what's coming next. And it also helps you to identify the loops or the behavioral patterns that are keeping you from your next move. Now, it's built around this understanding that leadership isn't a title you get handed. It is something that emerges from the inside out through that kind of deeper inner work that Reverend Evelyn and I are talking about right now. It's all a part of your evolutionary process. And these patterns can actually prevent you from evolving. So if this conversation is speaking to something in you, then this is your next step. And I want you to go in the show notes and click on the link for the Emergence Map and start today. Okay. I cannot wait to go over your results with you. Now back to this episode.
And so I
Mhm.
began to trust in that. I trusted in God, source, universe within me. And that's where my self trust is sourced. It's not in the personality of Evelyn, it is in that the eternalness, I know that's not a word, of the one that's within me.
Yeah. No, I get exactly what you're saying. Um, I went through something similar. And I remember after my divorce, I was like, what now? And I remember hearing school. I'm like, what? School? Now, mind you, I was one of those folks where I was not a big, like, put a college fund together for your children sort of thing. I was like, if you want to go to college, that you'll figure it out, right? And to hear, and I was 42. And I said, okay, I'm just going to follow this and see if everything happens the way it's supposed to, and it's
Mm.
supposed to happen. Within the week, I was enrolled in college
Oh,
at 40,
wonderful.
scared out of my mind, Reverend Evelyn, scared out of my mind just to go to a community college, just to, okay, let me go get my little associates. And then from there, ended up, and 5 years later, had my master's, right? And but it was that little voice inside, right? Now, go into that self trust. I too grew up in a Christian home, right? So I already had that conditioning. If you read my book, Who the Hell Do You Think You Are? You will tell in my book, in the way I'm writing, I have a mixture of biblical stories and some universal truths, right? Because I was
Mm.
going through this evolution of discovery in my spiritual life. And so that trust that I had out there on something
Mm.
else, I was learning then to now have it in myself, right? The God within me, right? Not really knowing that that's what it was. And that's the thing that people wrestle with a lot, is the God in me. How do I trust that? So what are some things that folks can do, just maybe small things, to get them to that point where they can trust the God within them?
Um, hmm. Things that you can do. I don't kn it's really about, um, knowing over believing, right? So,
Mm,
in religion, they rely a lot on belief, right? And as human beings, we can believe anything. Santa Claus? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like we if we choose to, we can believe anything. And some people are very skilled at getting people to believe things that absolutely are not true.
mhm,
So
mhm,
you have to you have to step out on a bit of faith, I guess is
mhm,
what,
mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah.
before because if you can't go from placing all of your trust and agency in something outside of yourself and then flip a switch and, oh, I have self-trust, and it's a process. So you
Yes.
try it and it works, and then you try it again and it works again. If you
Yes.
don't keep looking back, but keep looking forward and keep placing your trust in the divine within you, it is impossible to fail.
Yes.
The only way to, if you want to call it fail, is to doubt it and turn the other way.
Mhm, mhm. You said something about this difference between believing and knowing, that inner knowing, right? That's such a key thing to get from there to here, to that inner knowing part. And that is definitely a process. And I want to ask you, when it comes to um, women and spirituality and spiritual
Hmm.
leadership,
Hmm.
would you say that this self-trust part is a big obstacle, particularly for women? And the reason why I
Absolutely.
ask is because, just based on the work that I do, I see this pattern, right, of what you were mentioning before, the not enoughness.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I had the same thing. So are those some patterns that you're also seeing with some of the women that you work with?
Yes. So it goes back to the way we are, um, raised, domesticated in this culture,
Mhm.
that women, and I'm making broad generalizations. It
Of
doesn't mean
course.
every single woman. I'm
Of
just
course.
saying, in a broad sense, women, um, are thought to be less valuable than men, that men are stronger, that men are more intelligent, that men are the natural leaders, that women should follow behind them. And that whole obey thing. Woo! Um, so when I say believing, I mean, knowing over believing, to know something, you have evidence, right? So, um, as I said, when you start to trust in yourself and it works, then you have evidence.
Yes.
But a lot of women today and in this culture, broad generalizations, they have trouble trusting themselves because they don't have that evidence, right? And I often hear, even in speaking, right? Sometimes I hear women speaking with a very high pitch, and that might be their natural thing, but biologically, that sound is repellent. And an adult, a grown woman who speaks like a 4-year-old and who, with that little pitch at the end, is infantilizing herself, right? That's not leadership. You can't, um, children, they've done studies on children. Children naturally respond to the timbre of a male voice. My husband would walk into a room and say, do this. And my children were already doing it before the words were coming out of his mouth. I could say the same thing and you would think I hadn't said a word. So little things like that, like so the person, and I don't mean to be offensive. I'm just saying that if you are a woman who wants to be a leader, who wants to move people to your ideas and to share what's within you, think about who you are being right now, right? If you speak with that high pitch, soft, like, I don't want to offend anyone kind of a voice, think about how is that coming across? And does that sound like something someone wants to follow? And is it projecting your strength and your inner wisdom to the world? And so it's something to think about. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Sounds like that throat chakra needs some clearing.
exactly.
Yeah, I can understand that. And you can feel that too. I mean, I can feel it and I know the difference if I'm in a space and I am not showing up as my full self. There's some intimidation, there's some fear, and that I'm allowing it to really express itself. My voice will not have sort of I don't want to say the base, but it doesn't have the groundedness that
There you go.
it should have, right? And
Yeah.
so that's so important. And I want to ask you about the soul collage.
Hmm.
Yes, I want you to share with the audience what that is and how you practice that.
Okay. So Soul Collage was created by an art therapist named Sina Frost, and she's no longer with us. But she created this system where um, you collect image. So first of all, backing up the truck, Soul Collage is based on the idea that our subconscious mind communicates to us in through images more so than language. I mean, written word is an invention of modern man, modernish, but the subconscious mind communicates to our conscious mind through the use of images, right? So when you lay in bed asleep, you don't see words going across the screen of your mind. You see images, right? So Sina, in she created Soul Collage to be a tool for her art therapy practice. And you have to collect a bunch of magazine images, just random images, flowers, trees, birds, cars, people, landscapes. And she just, cuts the images out and has them on a table. And then you have these 5 by 8 cards, and you have scissors and a glue stick. It's very, very simple. It's an art practice that's not about making art, right? It's not about making beauty. It's about communication from yourself to yourself. So what you do is you have a blank card, and you just the way so in my training, my trainer had like 5 or 6 tables in the back of the room covered with magazine images. And she just said, go browse through the images, collect some, and bring them back to your table. And then we just put them together. We created collages, and then you decipher them. You interpret them, because your subconscious mind is the one that's choosing the images. So a really, really quick story. During my training, there was a table that just had faces, people, bodies and faces. And so we're milling around. I'm the only Black person there in the training, as I am often the only Black person there. Anyway, this picture of Idris Elba kept surfacing in the pile. Now, I adore me some Idris Elba. But I was like, no, I'm not making a Black soul collage card in this room full of all these white women, because, of course she's going to make a Black. Anyway, I'm looking for images. He keeps popping up. So I said, forget, finally, I gave in. I collect the picture. And then I collected a couple of other things. I went back to my table and I made a card. And then when I was walking back, it was at a retreat center. When I was walking from the art room to the cafeteria, I'm scrolling through Instagram and I keep seeing pictures of Idris Elba. And I'm like, what is happening? It was his birthday. It was his birthday. I'm not that much of a fan that I knew it was his birthday, but his picture just kept So, things like that. That's a kind of a comical one. But other synchronicities were showing up with people in the training, with the soul collage cards. And it's just a beautiful practice for, again, communicating from your subconscious mind to your conscious mind. You can do journaling from the cards, like you create a card, and then there's a sentence stem that says, I am one who, and then you fill in the blank, writing in the journal about what the card is speaking to you. And I mean, I could go on and on. There's so much to soul collage, but if people are interested, I would look it up. There's soul collage facilitators all over the place. I am one. And it's just such a beautiful way to just connect with your the messages that your subconscious mind has for you. That you it's very difficult. I mean, you could go into a deep meditation, but you could also do soul collage, and it's fun, and the messages are very clear.
No, definitely. I am so for that, and I believe in it. It's interesting you say that, because I did something like that around the time that I was going through my divorce and healing, and started sitting down. I have like a little artist journal. It's not the one with the lines. It's like if you want to just doodle. And I would take coloring pencils with me anyway and have it in my purse. And then whenever I was feeling like either anxiety or something was coming up, like I would just sit down and just, pick a color based on how I was feeling at that time and just let it do whatever it wanted to. So abstract, right?
That
it
is
doesn't
an art
make
therapy
sense
practice.
That
is an
it
art
doesn't
therapy
make
practice
sense to anyone, but it makes sense to me. And it's funny because I could go back over it maybe a week later, whatever, and clearly see what was trying to express itself, what wanted to have a voice at that time, right? And that actually is what introduced me to painting. I never considered myself an artist or a creative person, but I started painting and using color. And so I can definitely attest that it is so powerful. I've used it before in retreats with women. And I wasn't even like a facilitator of like certified. I just knew what worked for me. And so what you have is, you're trained in this, and that it sounds like such a beautiful practice. So I would recommend that to anyone, that
Absolutely.
if they're getting stuck and they're like the person that they don't know how to meditate, or they don't want to meditate, but they know that there are some things that they want to bring up, this will help them.
Yep,
Mhm.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just the
That's beautiful.
synchronicities that happen every single time I do soul collage. Yeah, every time I facilitate a session, um it's just amazing. It's 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 wonderful practice.
That's great. That's great. I love that. So the other thing you say is that you are a companion for your client's journey or their path, right? So why is that? Why are you using, rather than a teacher or even a coach, right?
Hmm.
And what kind of leadership is that? And why is that important right now where we are
Okay.
at this
Yeah.
time?
So companion guide, I like the guide or companion language, especially in this moment when all of the so-called, not all, I shouldn't say all, not all, many, several, a few, um, spiritual leaders have been caught not walking their talk, right? Um, I don't know if I should name names, but a countless number of, and all very recently, spiritual leaders have been outed as not at all living up to what they teach, living into the messages that they teach, which, not taking anything away from their content, because their content tends to be excellent, because their content doesn't come from them, it comes through them. So they are a vessel, right? And the human part of them is not as evolved, or and maybe that's not the right phrasing. They are not living in integrity from the human side of them. I don't want to use evolution. That's so. When I say guide, bec- the other thing is that in this culture we tend to look up to people until they do something to disappoint us, and then there's another sport of bringing them down. But if I am your guide, I'm like, here, take my arm. We'll go arm in arm and we'll go together, right? This is not knocking leadership, because it is a form of leadership, right? You don't want to just hook arms with anybody, right? You want to hook arms with someone who's been there and who can guide you. I don't want to go ahead on the path and keep looking back and saying, come on, come. I'm with you as we go along together. Because if I put myself up as like a guide or a guru or whatever, I am doomed to fail. And there's I don't know what's worse than finding out that your teacher is just a human being, right? Your guru has lacks self-control and makes poor choices, right? So that's why I don't hesitate. I just don't. The energy that I bring is guide and companion on the path to spiritual liberation, rather than standing at the front of the room with a stick and saying, and next we're going to do 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 do.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. You're right. This is, as we think about, well, first of all, let's go back to some of the fallen leaders, because we see this a major leadership crisis on so many levels. And I think we have to totally redefine what leadership actually means, what a true leader is, right? But also the language around that. And I've been playing with this too for a while, around leadership and looking at guides and facilitators and
Mm-hmm.
midwives, right? And,
Yep.
just sort of, and bringing in some of that feminine element to it. But I agree with that because everyone has a capacity to lead in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we all have to be to understand that we're human and we're flawed, right? Now, there are some things that you can look at and say, oh, a person, they made some mistakes in their past or they made a mistake. But there's a difference between falling and getting back up and continuing to move forward versus falling, getting up, fall like you're constantly falling, right? Or you're just staying down there, you fall, sort of thing, but you still want to lead from there. So I think so. There's definitely a difference, but I like that. I like that wording and that terminology, and I think that people want that because they want to know, yes, you have some wisdom because you've experienced some things, right? So you can help to guide me. You can facilitate this transition or transformation, in my life, and people
But yeah,
will be more open to that.
what I want to sort of squeeze in there, you said there's a difference between having made mistakes in your past and falling and getting up and going forward. And then there is falling, getting up, falling, getting up, falling. The falling, getting up is human. There's nothing wrong with that. The issue that I have with these, because there's leadership and then there's spiritual leadership. Okay. Um, an organizational development, leadership coach can talk his talk her talk on the stage, and then go out and get drunk and crash their car, do whatever they want, and come back on Monday and do it again. No one's gonna, we can separate their wonderful leadership development skills and all of the things that they teach from their personal lives, because their personal lives is a little bit of crash out, right? But a spiritual leader cannot, with any integrity, teach one thing and then live in a way that is a opposite of that, right? And so the issue that I have is not the falling down, getting up, falling down. Keep on doing that. You fall, you get up, but you are transparent about it. If you get up in front of people with white robes and, you know, people are asking you questions and seeking your wisdom, and they're just like, oh, and we treat them in a certain way. And then behind the scenes, you're violating young women because you have this psychological power and hold over, and the women, they don't know what to do. This is my guru, I can't tell him no. Really? So it's
Yeah.
it's the walking your talk thing, I feel like, that makes
Hmm.
spiritual leadership a little bit different,
Of
quite a
course.
bit different from like organizational leadership,
Oh,
because
definitely.
your
Yeah.
life is your ministry. And
Yes.
if you keep aspects of your life hidden, they will come out
Hmm. Hmm.
and, blow up your spot.
So let me ask you, do you believe that someone in an organization or the corporate world can be authentically in their spiritual leadership? Now, spiritual leadership doesn't mean that you have to um everything has to be like, some of these spiritual leaders that you were talking about, maybe Deepak
Hmm.
Chopra or something
Hmm.
like that. Doesn't
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to be your calling, but you can be a spiritual leader and maybe be in a corporation. Do you
Absolutely.
believe there's okay?
Oh, absolutely. Because
Mhm.
spiritual is not religious. It's
Mhm.
it's in it's working with the laws of the universe, right? So you can take spiritual principles and completely secularize them. Do you know what I mean? People have there are corporations where they have meditation rooms where you can go and sit in meditation. It's You're sitting in silence. There's nothing religious about that, right?
That's right.
So yes, you can bring spiritual principles and make them a make them completely neutral
Mm-hmm.
and bring them, because they will help, the workers who are there under stress, help them to process whatever. They're beautiful tools. It's just the way you
Yeah.
deliver them. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot
Yeah.
of room for spiritual leadership in corporate settings.
And
People need
even if it's
care.
not expressed, even if it's not in everything that you're doing with your team around you, I
Right.
feel like you can be a spiritual leader in how you live your life, right? And it'll be evident in your leadership. Like if you are a leader that before you start your day, you meditate or you pray or you ground yourself, right? You are someone that knows how to listen to people from a depth and not just surface, right? If you know how to communicate in such a way where people can tell that you care about what they're saying, right? And you're putting
Yes.
people first, people can sort of, know your heart, and still you can show up in that corporate space, right? And navigate it. But then that part of you might be just your personal way
Yeah.
you live. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because as I said before, people need care. And these are just tools. These are just tools for getting through life. Work can be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of these spiritual practices, that we hold with reverence, you can just,
Mm-hmm.
just teach them from, as I said, from a um, neutral position. And, the last one of my in-person jobs, I work, I self-employed, work from home. The last in-person job, people would come up to me and just go, "Wow, how are you so calm with all of the stuff that's going on around? What are you doing? Like, what is?" And
Mm-hmm.
I would just tell them, I don't let it, I don't take it in. I don't let it get to me. I don't tell them, that I meditate in the morning, and but I would just tell them, it's like, you don't need to get caught up in all of the drama, because it's just drama. It's a distraction.
Yes, yes, yes. And so we're getting to the close of our
Hmm.
conversation. This is so good. Time has gone by so quickly.
I know.
Ask you about you mentioned about spiritual liberation
Mm,
at the center of your work. What does that
hmm.
mean to you?
Spiritual liberation. So for me, it means sourcing from within, right? Liberation would be liberation from the dogma and doctrine of organized religion, right? Which is full of rules. It was invented for social control. Um, because we sort of know that human beings can be a little bit feral if left to their own devices. If left with no rules, with no structure, human beings tend to slide towards their mammalian roots, right? And religion is a good structure. It's a good
Mhm.
set of rules, like one man, one wife, children, house, picket fence, go to church on Sunday, give
Mhm.
10% of your, and
Mhm.
all that. It's very structured. So spiritual liberation is, and also, by the way, sourcing your good outside of yourself. Spiritual
Mhm.
liberation is about knowing that your good comes from within and sourcing your good, your abundance, your wisdom, your guidance, everything from within. So it's liberation from um, dogma and doctrine that are completely invented outside of yourself.
I love that. I
Um,
love that.
so yeah, that's what that's about.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Spiritual
Teaching people to
liberation.
rely on
Yes,
themselves
yes.
instead of taking on that idea. I mean, I know there are hundreds, maybe thousands of religions. My frame of reference is Christianity, which holds that we are as filthy rags. So if
Wow.
you don't want to consider yourself as a filthy rag
Mm-hmm.
and you want to pursue spiritual liberation, you are then seeing yourself as original blessing as opposed to being under original sin.
Ooh, beautiful, beautiful. That's a way to end this. But I do have one more question because
Okay.
I talk a lot about this new era that we're going into, the rise of the feminine, which is
We are
another
in.
conversation in its own, but also the rise of a different type of leadership, as we've already discussed. So, what
Mhm.
is the invitation that you would leave for this next cycle of leadership that we're going into, not just for women listening, but for, leadership as a whole, as it evolves?
Mhm. I would say back to the self-trust piece, right? Trust your inner knowing. And, you know, as like, okay, so I'm going to bring in the evil AI. As AI has been able to replicate human speech, even our appearances, right? We have to more learn to rely more on our the inner guidance that we receive, right? So when you have to have your mind open and ask, like, who's benefiting from me believing in this thing? Who benefits if I am frustrated, scared, frantic about a certain thing, right? And go within, which is, again, as we said earlier, it's a habit that you develop, is self-trust, right? Can I trust this thing? Can I trust this person? Um, and, lean. The Bible says, lean not on your own understanding. I say, lean on your own understanding. Lean on that inner knowing within you, because the one that created you is
Mhm.
guiding you from within you.
That's right. That's right. And that's what leads to the self-trust.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That is beautiful. Oh, Reverend Evelyn, this has been such a really wonderful conversation.
Yes.
And I just feel like if this doesn't open up the hearts and minds of people, I don't know what will. This is what the New Lead Order is all about, because this is another form of leadership, right? And the work that you're doing, in your practice, but also I want to say on Substack, you are leading by example. Your 40 days of prayer, your Wisdom Wednesdays, all of your insight that you're sharing. And it's what we need now. This is what
Yes.
we need now. So thank you so much for joining us
You're
today.
welcome.
Tell everyone where they can find you.
So my publication on Substack is Sacred Creative Soul Speaks. And today is March 20th, equinox, spring equinox. So this was day 30 of my 40 days of prayer for my observance of the secular Lent. So it'll 10 more days and that will be done. But the recordings are all in my publication. So yeah, check me
Mhm.
out on Substack. I'm also on YouTube with the same name, Sacred Creative Soul. And yeah, this is the work I came here to do. So my heart is full.
Yes, well, you're doing a beautiful job. Thank you
Thank you.
again. And thank you all for joining us for another episode of the New Lead Order. We'll see you next time.